The Young and the Restless Spoilers Fridays Update Full episodes August 31st, 2024. The hospital room was eerily quiet, save for the steady beeping of the monitors and the soft breathing of the two young women who had been through so much. Faith Newman and Lucy Abbott had been in a coma for what felt like an eternity to their family. But today, the impossible had happened. They had woken up. For Sharon Newman, it was nothing short of a miracle. She had spent countless nights by Faith's bedside, her mind drifting to memories of her first daughter Cassie, who had been taken from her far too soon. Sharon had prayed with every fiber of her being, silently begging Cassie to watch over her younger sister, to guide her back to. And now, as Faith's eyes fluttered open, Sharon's heart overflowed with emotion. She cried tears of joy, the release of pent-up sorrow and relief overwhelming her. Even as Faith's consciousness returned, Sharon couldn't stop the tears, weeping not out of despair but out of pure, unfiltered happiness. Nick Newman stood at the foot of the bed, watching his daughter as she slowly regained her bearings. He wanted to cry. God wanted to cry. The fear of losing another child had been unbearable. Now that Faith was awake, all of that fear had turned into a wave of overwhelming love and gratitude. But he held back. Sharon needed him to be strong, to be the rock she could lean on. If he broke down, he feared she might crumble too, and then who would protect her? So, Nick kept his tears at bay, his expression calm and composed, even though his heart ached with the intensity of his emotion. Sharon looked up at Nick through tear-filled eyes, searching for the same emotions she felt. She knew he was as relieved as she was, but the stoic mask he wore made her feel more alone in her joy than she wanted to admit. Yet, she understood why he did it. Nick had always been the protector, one who carried the weight of the world on his shoulders, so that she didn't have to. As the family shared a quiet moment of relief, another storm was brewing elsewhere in Genoa City. Victor Newman and Kyle Abbott were locked in a battle of wills, a confrontation that had been building for weeks. Victor, the patriarch of the Newman Empire, had long been accustomed to issuing orders and having them followed without question. Kyle was not one to be easily controlled. The tension between them had reached a boiling point, with Victor demanding Kyle's absolute loyalty and obedience. "You will do as I say, Kyle." Victor's voice had been cold and commanding. "You don't get to question my decisions. This is my company, and you are to follow my orders. That's not a request, it's an order." Kyle, who had grown up under the watchful eyes of his father, Jack Abbott, his stepmother, Diane, was used to a different kind of leadership. Jack and Diane had always respected his autonomy, guiding him with advice rather than dictating his every move. They had instilled in him a sense of independence, belief that he had the right to make his own choices and live with the consequences. For a while, Kyle had tried to appease Victor, to show respect and deference, even when it grated against his instinct. But now, standing in the Newman office, something in Kyle snapped. He was done playing the obedient soldier in Victor's game. "No, Victor," Kyle said, his voice steady but filled with defiance. "I won't be your puppet. You don't control me, and you don't control my life. My father taught me to stand up for myself, and I'm not going to let you dictate my every move." Victor's eyes narrowed, his face hardening into an expression of cold fury. "You're making a big mistake, Kyle. You have no idea what you're up against." Kyle met his gaze without flinching. "Maybe not, but I'm done letting you push me around. You think you can control everyone around you, but not me. Not anymore. I'm going to do what's best for me and for my family, and if that means going against you, then so be it." The confrontation left the air crackling with tension, the unspoken challenge hanging between them like a loaded gun. Kyle knew he was stepping into dangerous territory. But he couldn't back down now. He had been taught to respect strength, but also to know when to fight for what was right. And in this moment, fighting meant standing up to Victor Newman, even if it meant risking everything. As Kyle walked out of the office, his heart pounded with a mix of adrenaline and fear. He knew he was declaring war not just against Victor, but against everything the Newman name stood for. But he also knew that he couldn't live under Victor's thumb any longer. Jack and Diane had always encouraged him to follow his instinct, to be his own man, and that's exactly what he intended to do. Meanwhile, Victor stood alone in his office, his mind racing with thoughts of retribution. Kyle's defiance was not just an act of rebellion. It was a declaration of independence Victor could not afford to ignore. He had seen too many rivals, too many family members, fall by the wayside because they dared to challenge his authority. Kyle would learn the hard way. Crossing Victor Newman came with a price. Back at the hospital, Sharon and Nick continued to watch over Faith, their unspoken fears now tempered by relief. The joy of seeing their daughter awake and recovering was tempered by the knowledge that life in Genoa City was never simple, never easy. There were always battles to be fought, always storms on the horizon. But for now, at least they could breathe a little easier, knowing that Faith had made it through the worst. But as the days went on, the battle between Kyle and Victor loomed larger, casting a shadow over the city. Kyle knew that he would need the support of his family, Jack and Diane, more than ever. They had always been his foundation, the ones who believed in him even when the odds were against him. And now, as he prepared to face off against Victor, he knew that their guidance and support would be crucial. In the quiet moments between the chaos, Sharon found herself thinking of Cassie once more. Her daughter had been taken from her too soon. She believed that Cassie was watching over them, guiding them through the darkness. Faith's recovery was a sign, a reminder that even in the midst of turmoil, there was always hope. And as for Nick, he knew that his role as protector was far from over. Sharon needed him. Faith needed him. And soon enough, Kyle might need him too. The bonds of family were strong, but so were the challenges they faced. But Nick was ready to fight, ready to protect, and ready to stand by his family, no matter what. In the end, the battles they fought, whether in the boardroom or within their own hearts, were part of the fabric of their lives. And as the sun set over Genoa City, they all knew that the real fight had only just begun. This narrative weaves together the emotional highs and lows experienced by Sharon, Nick, Faith, and Kyle, highlighting the complexity of their relationships and the brewing conflict. The story leaves room for future development as the characters face the consequences of their choices. The room erupted into chaos as Martin bolted for the door, pushing past guests in his desperation to escape. The damage had been done. Truth was out, and there was no turning back. As the dust settled, Abby stood frozen, her heart pounding in her chest. The wedding was in shambles. Her mother had shattered the day she had dreamed of. But at that moment, Abby didn't care. Ashley had seen something no one else had. Despite everything, she had tried to protect her daughter in the only way she could. As Martin's footsteps faded into the distance, Abby turned to Ashley, who now seemed fragile and exhausted, the toll of the day's events weighing heavily on her. "Mom," Abby whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Ashley's expression softened, a hint of the mother Abby had always known returning. "I tried, sweetheart. I tried to warn you, but I couldn't let him ruin your life." "Not like this." Abby hugged her mother tightly, a mixture of relief and sorrow flooding her heart. The wedding might have been a disaster, but in that moment, none of it mattered. She had her mother back, at least for now, and together they would face whatever came next. As they stood there, the remnants of the wedding scattered around them, Abby realized that family wasn't just about blood or lineage. It was about the people who stood by you, who fought.